Rapper Lil Durk has been arrested and charged with a murder-for-hire plot. The Chicago native, whose real name is Dirk Banks, was arrested in Florida by the U.S. Marshals Service. The 32-year-old's arrest comes as 5 other people in Chicago were arrested in connection with the investigation. According to the complaint, Banks and his co-conspirators allegedly worked together to, quote, track, stalk, and attempt to murder a target at a Los Angeles gas station, firing at least 18 rounds into the person's vehicle.
Lil Durk might actually be coming home soon, and the case that's been hanging over his head could be falling apart fast. His powerhouse attorney, Drew Findling, just hit the feds with not one but 2 major motions to dismiss the charges. These aren't simple filings either. One motion goes straight at the foundation of the indictment itself, while the other questions the credibility and qualifications of the officers involved in building the case. This lawyer isn't playing. He's breaking down the prosecution from every possible angle, and here's the wild part. Before diving into those motions, we need to understand what Durk was even accused of in the first place. Prosecutors claimed he sent OTF members to California and covered their travel expenses for a supposed attack on Quando Rondo. But things reportedly went wrong, and someone else was tragically caught in the middle instead. They even alleged there was payment involved. But now, Drew Findling's team is fighting to prove the entire case doesn't hold up in court. I went through this indictment line by line. And honestly, the case against Lil Durk looks shaky at best. Outside of a few people who might be cooperating, there isn't much hard evidence directly linking him to anything serious. And as of now, it's not even confirmed whether anyone is officially cooperating with the feds. The main reason they're trying to paint Durk as the so-called mastermind comes down to a single text message and his connection to OTF members. According to the documents, Durk texted the person who was handling travel plans for some of his people, saying something along the lines of, "Don't book any flights under my name or using my card." That message became the centerpiece of the case. Investigators took that text and built a story around it, claiming it showed Durk had deeper involvement. On top of that, they even pulled lyrics from his songs and tried to use them as evidence in front of a grand jury. But here's where things start falling apart. Producers have already testified that some of those tracks were made long before the incident prosecutors are talking about. They've said on record that those songs had nothing to do with what happened to Quando Rondo's cousin. The defense team already pushed for dismissal once based on that. And even though the prosecutors tried to downplay their mistakes, saying they had other evidence, it still raised huge questions about the case's credibility. From the looks of it, the prosecutors might have rushed to bring charges after arresting several of Durk's close associates. Reports say they scrambled to file a complaint quickly because Durk was planning to leave the country, and they didn't want him slipping away. This whole thing sounds like it was built in a hurry, and now it's starting to show cracks. So let's break down the first motion to dismiss, because Drew Findling is coming in sharp with this one. Before we even touch the second motion, he's making it clear that the entire case against Lil Durk is built on weak, vague language. His main argument: the prosecutors rushed this whole thing. They were so focused on stopping Durk from leaving the country that they threw the case together before locking down any solid evidence or clear storyline. Findling points out that the language used in the indictment is all over the place. He says the prosecutors can't even decide what specific role Durk supposedly played. One minute it's about planning, the next it's about influence, but nowhere does it clearly define how he was actually involved. That's a major red flag in any serious case. Now check this. The official indictment claims that after the passing of Davon Bennett, also known as King Von, Lil Durk made it clear in coded language that he would offer some kind of monetary reward to anyone involved in an act of retaliation. But even that statement is filled with uncertainty. The wording switches between bounty, reward, and payment without ever explaining what it means or who it was supposedly directed to. That kind of language leaves way too much room for interpretation. And it doesn't stop there. The indictment also uses phrases like "at the direction of Lil Durk," saying that certain individuals traveled from Chicago to Los Angeles to allegedly target someone linked to the earlier situation. But again, where's the proof that Durk directed anything? Those claims sound open-ended, like the investigators themselves aren't even sure what really happened. That's exactly what Drew Findling is attacking in his motion. He's arguing that the feds use loose, speculative language just to make the story sound stronger than it really is. When a case this serious is built on unclear wording and shifting theories, it's a major problem. And Findling knows it. He's calling them out for trying to connect dots that simply don't line up. The indictment goes even further, claiming that at the direction of Lil Durk, one of his associates supposedly arranged cars, masks, and weapons for others involved. But here's the problem. What does "at the direction of" even mean? Did Durk call someone? Did he text? Was there a middleman involved? None of that is actually explained anywhere. The wording leaves everything wide open, and that's exactly what Drew Findling is calling out. Findling believes the prosecutors kept things vague on purpose, so they can change their storyline later. He suspects they're leaving the details flexible just in case a cooperating witness shows up and gives them a new angle. That way, they can rewrite parts of the story without contradicting what's already on record. Sneaky move, right? Here's how Findling breaks it down. If the feds claimed Durk paid a specific amount, say $100,000, and later a witness says it was $20,000 or even just a small favor, their whole argument would crumble. Same thing if they said Durk paid people through music contracts or deals with OTF, but later a witness testified it was actually just jewelry or symbolic gifts. That would expose major inconsistencies in their case. So instead of locking in a version of events, prosecutors are keeping everything cloudy. No solid numbers, no real evidence trail, just a lot of maybe and possibly. That's what makes this motion to dismiss so strong, because Findling is saying straight up, they don't have anything concrete on Durk. Every part of this story is built on open-ended phrases that could be twisted at any time, and that's not how a solid case is supposed to work. Drew Findling isn't holding back. He's calling the prosecutors out directly in his first motion to dismiss. In the filing, Findling argues that the entire indictment against Lil Durk is impermissibly vague. In plain terms, that means it's so unclear that the defense is left guessing what the government's actual theory even is. He points out that because the story keeps shifting, the prosecution could keep changing their version of events every time a new witness or a cooperator adjusts their story to fit what the government wants. Findling writes that this kind of vague accusation violates Durk's constitutional rights, specifically the Fifth and Sixth Amendments, because it doesn't give him a fair chance to understand the charges or properly prepare a defense for trial. That's a huge deal in court. So he's not just asking for dismissal, he's also asking for what's called a bill of particulars. That's basically a demand for the prosecutors to list out every specific detail: who did what, how, when, and through what kind of communication. He's saying, if you claim Durk gave orders, then show exactly how. Was it through a phone call, a text, or someone else? He's demanding real facts, not guesswork. Now here's where it gets even more intense. Prosecutors will likely fight hard not to hand over that bill of particulars, because if they can't provide details, their case risks falling apart. Findling's argument is simple. The government doesn't know exactly what happened, and that's why they're keeping their language gray and flexible. The indictment accuses Durk of conspiracy and participation in what they call a murder-for-hire setup, claiming it involves some kind of payment, reward, or benefit of value. But again, even there, the language is fuzzy. It could mean anything from money to business perks, nothing solid or specific. That's why Findling says the whole thing makes no sense whatsoever. It's too broad, too uncertain, and too easy to twist later. At this point, the motion is crystal clear. Findling wants either the case thrown out completely or, at the very least, for the prosecution to finally show their cards and prove what, if anything, they actually have on Lil Durk. That's wild. Seriously, it's unbelievable how stretched some of this sounds. Think about it. If the language in the indictment is that vague, prosecutors could twist anything into evidence. Drew Findling even pointed out how ridiculous that could get. Imagine if Lil Durk ever treated his team to dinner. Suddenly, that meal could be labeled as a form of payment. That's how loosely they're framing this. Findling's argument hits hard. He's saying that if they don't list specific details, they can spin normal acts of generosity into something criminal. These are OTF members, guys Durk's been around for years, people who've gotten support, gifts, even help with travel or expenses. Durk's been known to look out for his people. So if prosecutors can call any show of appreciation something of value, they could twist every good deed into part of the case. That's exactly why Findling is demanding specifics: who got what, when, and why. He's saying you can't just take moments of kindness and rewrite them as evidence of wrongdoing. If Durk gave someone a chain, covered a meal, or let them use his card for label work, that doesn't automatically mean it's tied to a crime. Without concrete proof of intent, those things can't be labeled as payments. And Findling doesn't stop there. He also goes after the "at the direction of" claim in the indictment. That phrase shows up all over the document, saying Durk supposedly told others to travel, to follow someone, or to plan something. But again, there's no clarity on when, where, or how any of that supposedly happened. In his motion, Findling argues that the feds failed to say who received these alleged directions, what form they took, or what proof they even have. He's saying that kind of ambiguity violates Durk's right to a fair trial, because the defense can't respond properly if the accusations aren't specific. At the end of the day, Findling's message is clear. If the indictment stays this vague, then a bill of particulars, that list of specific details, is absolutely required. Otherwise, they're trying to build a serious case off of guesswork, not facts. So now that we've broken down the first motion, here's where things get even more intense. Lil Durk's legal team is officially demanding a bill of particulars. That means Drew Findling wants prosecutors to show exactly what their story is and how they plan to prove it. He's asking for a clear list that spells out every single detail. The exact words Durk supposedly used, what he allegedly offered, when and where it happened, and who was even there to witness it. Everything needs to be on paper, no more guessing or vague statements. Findling's motion lays it all out. He wants to know the date, time, setting, and audience of this supposed bounty offer. He wants to see the same kind of proof for every at the direction of claim too. Because without specifics, Durk's defense can't respond fairly. And that's exactly what the law protects under the 5th and 6th Amendments. But here's where it gets wild. That was only the first motion. Drew Findling had a second one locked and loaded, and this one goes straight for the jugular. In the second motion to dismiss, he digs deep into the people behind the case and exposes something huge. According to his findings, the U.S. attorney who brought the charges, a man named Bilal, may not have even had the proper authority to file them in the first place. Findling's argument is bold. If the person who filed the indictment didn't have the legal power to do so, then the entire case could collapse instantly. He's basically saying the foundation of this prosecution might be unconstitutional from the very start. So not only is Findling attacking the vagueness of the case, now he's challenging the legitimacy of the person who filed it. If he's right, this could be a complete game changer for Durk, because an invalid indictment means everything that followed could get thrown out. In the second motion to dismiss, Drew Findling takes things to a whole new level. He's saying flat out that this entire case needs to be thrown out because the U.S. attorney who filed it might not have even had the legal authority to do so. That's right. He's going straight after the foundation of the prosecution itself. Findling argues that the appointment of Bilal Asali as U.S. Attorney for the Central District of California violated the Appointments Clause of the U.S. Constitution. In simple terms, he's saying Asali wasn't properly or lawfully appointed to that position, which means he didn't have the power to lead this case in the first place. And that's not all. Findling says Asali's appointment also breaks the Appropriations Clause and the Federal Vacancies Reform Act, which sets limits on how long someone can temporarily serve in such a powerful position. According to Findling's research, Asali's 120-day term as interim U.S. Attorney started on April 2, 2025, after the previous U.S. Attorney, Martin Estrada, resigned earlier that January. By law, that term should have ended on July 30, 2025, unless a new appointment was made or extended through the proper channels. But public records show that the district judges never officially extended or renewed his term. No announcement, no order, nothing. Here's where things start getting murky. Instead of stepping down when his time was up, Asali allegedly made a series of behind-the-scenes moves to keep his position. On July 29, 2025, just one day before his term expired, he reportedly pulled off a legal maneuver, resigning, then quickly being redesignated as a special attorney and first assistant. Soon after, he stepped right back in as the acting U.S. Attorney under the Federal Vacancies Reform Act, without any Senate confirmation. Now, Findling's argument is that this move wasn't just improper, it could be unconstitutional. He says Asali was never a confirmed special attorney or first assistant in the first place, meaning he didn't meet the qualifications to hold that title legally. So when he resigned and then reappointed himself, it looked like an attempt to sidestep the confirmation process altogether and keep control of the position. That's a massive deal, because if the U.S. attorney wasn't properly authorized, then every action taken under his name, including Lil Durk's indictment, could be invalid. Findling's basically saying if the foundation of the case isn't legal, then the case itself can't stand. This second motion could be explosive, because if the court agrees with Findling, this wouldn't just clear Lil Durk's name in this case, it could expose a serious procedural violation inside the Justice Department itself. And here's where everything comes full circle. This move allowed Bilal Asali to stay in power permanently as the U.S. attorney, completely sidestepping the Senate confirmation process. That's a massive deal, because under the Appointments Clause of the U.S. Constitution, the president must nominate, and the Senate must confirm, anyone serving as a U.S. officer, including a U.S. attorney. But Asali wasn't confirmed by the Senate at all. Instead, he was appointed directly by the Attorney General, something only allowed under very specific conditions set by the Federal Vacancies Reform Act. And according to Drew Findling, Asali didn't meet any of those conditions. He wasn't already serving as a first assistant, wasn't a Senate-confirmed official in another position, and wasn't a senior officer within the same district. That makes his entire appointment as acting U.S. attorney invalid under federal law. Here's what's even crazier. Findling explains that right before his temporary 120-day term expired, Asali stepped down for a single day, leaving the position empty. Then, either he or the Attorney General turned around and reappointed him as both first assistant and special attorney, allowing him to slide right back into power under the same law he was supposed to step down for. That maneuver, according to Findling, completely bypassed Senate oversight, something the Constitution was designed to prevent. Findling calls it what it is, unconstitutional. He says you can't just skip the confirmation process and hand such a powerful position to someone simply because they're politically connected. This isn't how a democracy is supposed to work. It's not some backroom deal where friends give each other federal power. So now Findling is standing firm, saying Asali had no legal right to act as U.S. attorney, meaning every move he made, including the charges against Lil Durk, could be void. If that's proven true, this entire case could collapse in one motion. It's wild to think about. A technicality this deep might end up changing everything for Durk. From rushed charges to questions of constitutional law, Drew Findling has cracked open something that even the feds didn't see coming. So what do you think? Is this the break that finally clears Lil Durk once and for all? Drop your thoughts below. And don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe so you don't miss what happens next in this crazy legal showdown.